Now at 5, the Biden administration sticking to the August 31st withdrawal deadline.
The mission there being performed is dangerous, and is now it's come with a significant loss of American personnel.
Many Afghans now trying to escape under the added threat of terrorist attacks, and a Colorado man unsure if his family will make it out.
If there's any way, I'm gonna go. I'm not more important than my mom or my wife, you know.
Now he's pleading with Colorado lawmakers to help any way they can. Just 4 days left to get about 500 U.S. citizens out.
The deadline to withdraw American troops and allies from Afghanistan is Tuesday, August 31st.
Already a monumental challenge, the race to evacuate is even more urgent and dangerous. More than 100,000 have already been airlifted out, and satellite photos show the once packed roads around the Kabul airport nearly empty.
Well, good evening. Thank you for joining us at 5. I'm Shannon Ogden.
Good evening. I'm Ann Trujillo. The Biden administration says another terror attack in Kabul is likely after yesterday's bombing killed 13 U.S. service members and at least 160 Afghans.
And yesterday marks the deadliest day for American troops in a decade. The Pentagon says it was a single ISIS-K suicide bomber responsible, and the threat of additional attacks remains. U.S. officials say they will screen everyone at the airport until the very last second.
We obviously don't want to see any more casualties. That's why we are monitoring the threat streams very closely.
We have the ability to include evacuees on U.S. military airlift out of Afghanistan until the very end.
The White House says there are about 500 U.S. citizens still waiting to leave, along with thousands of Afghan citizens.
And that attack has only made it harder for people to get to the Kabul airport. Over the past week, we've told you the stories of several Coloradans hoping their families can make it out safely.
Denver7's Russell Haythorne spoke to a Denver man now unsure if his entire family will be able to leave.
As thousands try to get out of Afghanistan,
They fear for their lives.
this man would like nothing more than to go in.
If there's any way, I'm gonna go. I'm not more important than my mom or my wife, you know.
His first name is Noor. He asked us not to use his last name or show his face, and he is desperate to get his family out from under the cruel hands of the Taliban.
The river of blood is in Kabul right now. They're gonna kill us.
Noor's mother and his wife, along with his brother Abdul Shakur and Abdul's wife and 5-year-old daughter, have all tried for days to flee Afghanistan.
He went to airport several times with his wife and his daughters. The first time they stayed like almost 24 hours. He handed all his documents to U.S. Marine, and they told him it's not completed and you have to go back home.
In Noor's opinion, the U.S. occupation of Afghanistan was not perfect, but it was working.
We had a hope for the future. I was trying to go to do my master's degree here and go back home to help with the education system, the human rights.
His brother, Abdul, was contracted by the U.S. government, serving as a civil engineer for the U.S. in Afghanistan before the Taliban gained control of Kabul.
I have his documents here.
Noor fears his brother is now a prime target for the Taliban.
They start searching house to house, and if they know you work with the U.S. government as a contractor or Afghan governments, and they will show you who you are.
Noor has contacted the offices of Jason Crow, Diana DeGette, and Governor Polis to no avail.
I reached out to our governor. I sent him an email. I never got a response from him back.
Desperation as the violence in Kabul escalates and the deadline to get out approaches.
It's our president's fault. It's our Joe Biden's fault. The civilian people is dying every day, every hours, especially the kids and women.
Russell Haythorne, Denver7.
And we know news of the deaths of U.S. military members is especially devastating to service members, veterans, and Gold Star families alike. And when it comes to the serious issue of PTSD, getting help fast is key. Let's bring in Denver7 reporter Eric Lufer now for this. And Eric, you just spoke with a veteran who started an organization that is literally saving lives.
Yes, Dan Jarvis started 220, a nationwide organization dedicated to healing our heroes who serve overseas by helping them deal with traumatic emotions before they, God forbid, take their own lives, which happens far too often to our veterans. Jarvis reached out to us because he wants people to know what he can provide. Here he is. He served in Afghanistan himself back in 2011. He says he developed PTSD once he came back home. Talking specifically about what is happening in Afghanistan, Jarvis says he's hearing from a lot of veterans now who are sad. He says some are questioning what their purpose was serving in Afghanistan for so long. Most importantly, Jarvis says time is of the essence for a lot of vets right now who are dealing with the immediate trauma of what's happening overseas. Jarvis's message to those veterans: seek help immediately.
So we can take somebody who is in a state of crisis, we can run these protocols, and we can disconnect the trauma response. And now they're no longer in crisis because they're no longer neurologically connected to the emotion connected to that trauma.
Now, if you or someone you know is really struggling right now, you can go to 220.org, 22zero.org. Jarvis says getting immediate help is easier than ever because of this new world of video chats brought on by the pandemic. Shannon.
Well, so important. Thank you for that. And so many of you have heard these stories, seen these images out of Afghanistan, and you're wondering how you can help. Our wonderful Denver7 digital team put together a full list for you on thedenverchannel.com.
The man who assassinated Robert Kennedy in 1968 has been recommended for parole. Sirhan was approved on his 16th attempt after spending the last 53 years in prison. However, this decision is not yet final. California's governor will ultimately decide whether the 77-year-old can be released, and that decision could take several months. You know, if you aren't careful, parking in the wrong spot in downtown Denver could cost you a small fortune.
But what happens if you pay for parking and then you still get a ticket anyway? Well, that is exactly what happened to one man who contacted Denver7's Liz Gilardi.
Oh yeah, it's extremely hard to find parking in Denver.
With parking at a premium, Casey Hillenberg was scrambling to find a spot when he had to go to downtown Denver for work.
I was sent over there in the middle of the day to go finish out a shift at another location.
He's parked at this lot before, right at 16th and Wazee.
I ended up paying this time $20 for all-day parking, and they ended up giving me an $80 ticket.
That's right. Casey said he paid for parking, but he still ended up with a ticket and he couldn't figure out why.
So this is my bank statement, and here's the $20.40 that they took out.
He said this machine wasn't working, so he used the QR code to pay. He showed us proof. Casey also tried to dispute the ticket with a company called Parking Revenue Recovery Services. He wasn't getting anywhere, so he reached out to contact Denver7.
That was my biggest thing with them, is when I went and called them, is they told me that my credit card receipt was not proof enough, but they never gave me a receipt after purchasing. It simply just went, thank you for purchasing, flew back to another screen, and there was no kind of proof of confirmation of purchase.
The company's executive vice president called me back and said Casey never should have received a ticket. They were able to find proof that Casey paid and ultimately voided that ticket. He also told me this parking lot uses license plate recognition software, and they've now flagged it as an issue. We asked what you need to know to prevent a similar situation. The company says to take a screenshot or request an emailed receipt, some kind of documentation with your license plate number showing that you paid.
Luckily today I'm able to pay the ticket, but you know, there's times in my life where $80 would have been a lot more than it is today.
Luckily today, he doesn't have to. Liz Gilardi, Denver7.
The Supreme Court struck down the CDC's eviction moratorium yesterday, and there are some limited options left for Coloradans. Governor Polis signed an executive order requiring landlords to give 30 days notice before evicting a tenant over non-payment. During those 30 days, tenants can stop the process by applying for a rental assistance fund. However, that protection expires September 4th. Now, in a statement to the Denver Post, the governor's office says he will consider extending that order if rental assistance applications are backlogged.
A new report finds the number of people experiencing homelessness in Denver has doubled, and mostly because of the pandemic. The executive director of the Metro Denver Homelessness Initiative says in 2020, there were about 1,300 people in shelters. And this year, when that survey was conducted in February, they counted more than 2,500.
Thanks to a community campaign, too, Denver high schools are finally, or schools, I should say, are finally unified again. About 10 years ago, West Middle and West High School were split into two smaller schools to try and boost test scores. Well, now, after a big push from alumni, students, and staff, they merged into a single school once again. Denver7's Micah Smith sat down with the middle and high school principals. They say it's important for the community to bring these two back together.
It wasn't just students and families that were impacted, staff was as well. And so, you know, they really
they really miss this place and they wanted it to come back together.
I always bring back alumni to be able to talk to our staff and give them advice or wisdom. Some are, previous educators, staff members, or parents.
And DPS is hosting a grand opening for the campus tonight. The new monument commemorating the 1969 West High School blowout will be unveiled. It honors the blowout protest in 1969 against injustices and racism experienced by Chicano students in Denver. In 2019, on the 40th anniversary of the protest, I spoke to Emmanuel Martinez. He was arrested and beaten for protesting.
Batons swinging and everything, and my charge, like most everybody else, was assaulting the policeman. Thank goodness all the television stations were there, that their films were subpoenaed, and it showed exactly what happened.
The monument and grand opening ceremonies at West High begin in just a few minutes at 5:30.
It's a bar without the booze. Pandemic lifestyle changes giving rise to a new community of non-drinkers.
Drank very avidly for 25 years. I felt like I experienced every range of experience that alcohol has to offer, and I was ready for something new.
Plus, the Broncos are playing in front of a packed stadium for the first time in 2 years. What you need to know before heading to Mile High Stadium tomorrow.